Welcome to Travel Italia, the show about travel in Italy. Hi, welcome back to the show. Today's episode is part 5 of my series on Lake Como. If you're planning a trip to Lake Como and haven't heard the previous episodes in this series, I encourage you to take a listen to those. They're full of useful information. Today's episode is all about traveling to Lake Como on a budget. You may be asking, is it even possible to visit Lake Como on the budget? Isn't this where A-list stars come to vacation and Hollywood elites have their vacation homes? Yeah, that's true. The lake is known all over the world as a luxurious vacation destination where famous people like George Clooney spend time in their films like Casino Royale, Star Wars, and so many other movies have been filmed. But I would argue that it is still possible for average people like you and me to visit Lake Como and not break the bank. The truth is, Lake Como, compared to other vacation destinations around Europe, is moderately priced. So it's not out of reach for the average person. So in this episode, I'll give you some tips on how to save money and enjoy Lake Como on a budget. Well, let's consider some statistics taken from people who actually visited Lake Como. The average price of a 1-week stay at Lake Como is 1,620 USD. That's 1,497 euro. And this is per person. Okay, so if you're traveling as a couple, you would just double that. Now, this price includes accommodations, meals, transportation around the lake, and attractions. Now, I don't think this is a horrible number. I think it's a realistic number, but I do believe that you can get by with less. So today I'll give you some tips on how to do that. So let's start off with the most obvious way to save money, and that's by saving money on accommodations. Now, if you're on a budget, obviously you're not going to stay in a luxury hotel that costs, 1,000 euro a night. Thankfully, there are accommodations to fit every kind of budget. So everything from rooms to rent in private residences, if that's a kind of thing that you want to try, or, small B&Bs, vacation rentals, and then, of course, 2-star, 3-star hotels. Okay, so in addition to picking accommodations that are less expensive, not luxurious to save money, you also really want to consider what time of year you visit the lake. You want to avoid the high season to get better prices. In my opinion, the best time to visit the lake is in late March, early April, or late September and early October. Let me give you an example. A vacation rental, a 1-bedroom apartment with a living room, bathroom, kitchen, washer, dryer that sleeps 3 people, which is in the heart of Menaggio. I'm using, for those of you who are wondering, I'm using booking.com when I'm looking at these prices. So in the heart of Menaggio, which is in the Larian Triangle. Remember, the Larian Triangle is the most popular, the most sought after area of Lake Como. So this little rental costs 155 euro a night in the month of July. Okay, that's 169.52 in USD. And that's for double occupancy. Now, this apartment has good reviews. It's really an ideal location, but it's very basic. There's nothing luxurious about it. It's just a little rental apartment. And the price is good for being the high season. 155 euro a night is a good price. But the exact same apartment rents for 126 euro a night at the end of March. Okay, that's 137 and 81 cents in USD. So, I mean, it's not a huge savings, but that's a savings of 29 euro a night, which of course adds up. So, visiting during the off season is definitely cheaper, and the added bonus is that it's less crowded. My second tip is about meals. Statistics say that a person can expect to spend 60 euros per day on food. So, for a couple, obviously, that's 120 euro a day just on food. Now, I don't think this number is wrong, but I do believe you can find ways to spend less. So, meals are a huge expense at Lake Como because you have limited dining options. Let me explain what I mean. There are tons of restaurants to choose from, but the problem is that most are sit down restaurants, white tablecloth restaurants that cater to tourists. So there's not a lot of choice when it comes to types of restaurants. And because they cater to tourists, prices tend to be a little bit higher. In the US, for example, we have every kind of fast food, unhealthy stuff, burgers and fries, but also healthy fast food, wraps or salads. The ethnic food, the choices are endless. So if you want to eat a quick meal and not spend a ton of money, you might choose one of these fast food or casual dining type places. But at Lake Como, there are very, very few fast food quick meal options. In fact, you'll find fast food only in the town of Como. All the other towns around the lake, which are small towns, do not have any fast food places at all, except for perhaps, a pizza restaurant that you can order out. And by fast food, I mean chain fast food restaurants and just quick grab and go type places. So, what's a person supposed to do when they want to save money on food costs? Well, I suggest limiting yourself to one restaurant meal a day. If you really want to cut costs, make that meal lunch because, in general, lunch menus are cheaper. What about dinner, you ask? Well, Italians eat dinner very, very late. It's normal for them to eat dinner at 8 o'clock or 8:30 p.m., which I know to the rest of the world sounds crazy, but that's just how things are here. But what they do around 5 to 7 p.m. is called an aperitivo or happy hour. And during these hours of aperitivo, when you go to a cafe, a bar, you don't get a discount on drinks, but what Italian bars and restaurants do is they offer snacks to go with your drink, and these snacks are complimentary. So if you order a spritz or a glass of wine, you get a little array of maybe chips, olives, some nuts, cheese, and it's free. Some bars and restaurants are more generous than others, so maybe ask what is included before you sit down. But the fact is, a lot of Italians do this if they want to skip dinner altogether and save money, and they call it apericena, which cena means dinner, so they mix the word aperitivo and cena together to make an apericena. So they'll go out with friends, have a drink, nibble on some potato chips and cheese and maybe some olives and call it dinner. It's a great way to save money, and you're also participating in a real Italian tradition. Another option for dinner is just ordering an appetizer and sharing a plate. There's also lots of pizza places, pizza restaurants, where if you ask, they will let you order a pizza to go. So If you don't see a to-go menu, you can just simply ask if you can order something to go. For lunch, if you don't want to sit down at a restaurant, you can always go to a cafe, or as Italians call them, bars. So in Italy, remember, a cafe is called a bar. And they sell everything from coffee and pastries in the morning to inexpensive panini for lunch. Some of them even do salads, but I'm usually pretty disappointed with Italian salads. So nearly every bar makes panini, and it's usually something very simple, usually some kind of cold cut cheese and bread, and that's it. That's usually what paninis consist of. They're not elaborate, very simple. The interesting thing about bars or cafes in Italy is that they rarely have a menu. They usually put what they have available out for display behind a glass case. So if you are unsure, you don't see panini around, just ask. They may just make something up for you if you ask. So keep that in mind as you're considering your options. One last thing about meals at restaurants. Remember that in Italy, it's not necessary to tip. Every restaurant charges a small fee per person. It's called a coperto. It's usually listed on the menu somewhere, and it ranges from 2 to 4 euro a person. And this fee covers the cost of the personnel, so there's no need to leave a hefty 15 to 20% tip. Now, if you received excellent service and you want to leave something, a few euros will do. There's no need to leave a substantial tip. As I've mentioned in previous episodes in this series, most of the towns around Lake Como, with the exception of Lecco and the city of Como, are very small, some smaller than others. And so grocery options are kind of limited because the only big grocery stores are in the cities of Lecco and Como. So there are grocery stores around the lake, but they tend to be very small and sparse. But just about in every town, there's a bakery and shops that sell cheese and salumi and maybe local ingredients that you can pick up to make yourself a lakeside picnic. So some olives, some salami, some cheese, wine, and some fruit makes for a great picnic. And if you're staying in a vacation rental with the kitchen, that is, of course, a huge money saver. Picking up ingredients at a grocery store before you get to your rental so that you can make meals is, of course, a great way to save money. Another tip on how to save: if you're staying in a hotel, check to see if the breakfast is included in the price of the room. Many hotels include breakfast in the price of the room, and in Italy, it's usually a really nice continental breakfast with lots of variety, cold cuts, cheese, bread, yogurt, fruit, pastries, coffee, juice. That's what you usually find, and it's usually done very well. So, of course, not having to pay for breakfast and eating a substantial breakfast helps you save money on food costs. All right, so let's move on to another tip about transportation. So, in previous episodes, I talked about how to get around the lake and the different kinds of transportation available to get from point A to point B. So, if you're on a budget, then of course you want to avoid using expensive water taxis or boat rides to get around, but instead use the public ferry system. It's really affordable. There are different pricing options. You can get a 24-hour unlimited use pass for only 28 euro. So you can easily get around the lake and spend very little. Now, you don't have to get an unlimited pass. You can also just get from point A to point B for very little. I suggest that you go back to listen to part 2 of the series where I explain how to get around the lake and more specifically, how to use the public ferry system. You really don't want to miss that episode because I explain how it works and how you can avoid standing in very long lines by buying your tickets online. My last tip on how to see Lake Como on a budget is to look for discounts when visiting attractions. So, for example, Villa Carlota, one of the most famous villas on the lake, offers all kinds of discounts. Discounts for seniors, for children, for families, and for adults. Most attractions in Italy, museums, historical sites, they offer an under 26-year-old discount or a university discount. Lots of places admit kids for free, and most places offer a senior discount. So it pays to do some research, do your homework, visit the official websites of the places you're visiting, because that's where you're going to get the most accurate information. Don't rely on third-party websites, and avoid buying tickets for attractions on third-party websites, because they're marking up the price, they're making a profit. So that's another way to save, is to avoid third-party websites. Well, those are all the tips I have for you today. I hope this episode has helped you see that Lake Como is not only for the rich and famous, but can be enjoyed by everyone. If this has been helpful, please subscribe, share, and rate this show. I so appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I wish you a buon viaggio. Ciao.